technically. And so welcome today, and I'm so glad that we're able to pick it up and go through with it today. Both Ian and I have known Geoff for many years as a colleague, and one of his great achievements is to issue a couple of times, 3 times a year, I think, maybe more, a wonderful, what should I say, satirical newsletter called Testing Times, which looks at the life around as well as life in teaching, and it's actually really very, very good fun and interesting to read. He's teaching at the Technical University of Dortmund in Germany, where he is specializing in English for specific purposes. But also, we were just talking about it, he's the chair of the Anglo-German Society in Dortmund, and actually takes people from Dortmund to Leeds in UK, where he can actually, where they can actually meet and mix with. So you have a wonderful intercultural link between Dortmund and the north of England in that respect. Okay, just one more thing I think possibly to say. Although the session is called Book or No Book, Geoff is the author of books, and one of his best known ones is Humour in the English Classroom, and that was published by Delta Publishing, which is a branch of CLET, one of the largest and most important publishers for languages in Germany, and it's in English. And I think with that introduction, we need to move on to answering this question. Book or no book? Geoff, over to you.
Okay, well, thanks, Barry, and thanks, Ian, for the introductions. Yes, book or no book, a question I'm sure many teachers ask themselves regularly. And it's especially in my case because of the special nature of the courses I take. As Barry says, English specific purposes, and the question does arise, book or no book. And this question is often asked when you have to take on a new course that you've never done before, whether it's at a university or whether a private school. The director suddenly says, would you like to take on this course? And you haven't done this before. So the question is, you have to answer for yourself, is book or no book? And then that kind of attitude applies. Do we take one of the courses on the market, or do we not take one of the courses on the market? Do we go this way? Do we go that way? What I'd like to do is discuss in the first few minutes the background to the problem, then the pros and cons of working with books, then how to structure a course should you not want to work with a book, how to structure a lesson should you not want to work with a book. I'll show you a concrete example that I've used in one of my courses, and right at the end, any questions or any comments. But if you feel like to make a comment or a question halfway through, put it into the chat, and then Ian will pass the comment or question on to me. All right. So background. How many people here regularly teach without a course book? Any? I can't see. Barry, anybody? Has anyone got a overview of all the various participants? All right, we'll get that one open.
We've got a couple of people.
Yeah, what kind of courses, Barry?
Like yourself, we're teaching English for specific purposes. In other words, business people who have specific requirements which are not met by regular textbooks.
All right. Are you all happy teachers in the situation working with the book or with not a book? And the question then is, why are you happy or why are you not happy? I just like to think for 10 seconds, are you happy? Are you not happy with the book that you are working with? Right. Now, when it comes to the question of whether or not to use a commercially available course book or not, there are at least 3 truths you should realize. The first truth is, no matter what course you teach, there's no book that has been created specifically for your Tuesday evening 1800 to 1930 English course. Secondly, whatever book you do choose for your Tuesday 1800 to 1930 English course is almost inevitably going to turn out to be a compromise. And the third one is, irrespective of the book you choose, you will only discover to what extent it is suitable or not as a compromise after you have started working with it. So those are the three things you have to realize before you make the decision, yes or no, book or no book. And the decisions have to be taken on from various perspectives. It may be from the language school's perspective, because they have particular interests in the types of courses they are offering. It could be the student's perspective, it could be the teacher's perspective, but these perspectives have to be taken into consideration. And of course, the answer depends on the type of course and the aims of the course and the level. Is it A1, B1, C1? Is it a skill-based discussion group, conversation course? Is it an examination-based course? Is it an ESP course like Barry and mine, or a general English course? NOPE means not. I've forgotten. So like not for any particular purpose. Anyway, right. But pros and cons. What are the pros and cons of working with a book or not working with a book? One of the reasons for choosing a course book is it provides a structure for the course. It's easy. The structure is given to you. There's a linear structure for learning, which becomes which is definitely important at beginner's level, becomes perhaps less important at the higher levels, but definitely at A or B1. It already does the work for you in terms of putting things in digestible, bite-sized chunks of language. There's a transparent progression because you can see what's coming next. It gives you a feeling of, then the students, a feeling of cohesion, that it does look like a coherent course. It saves preparation time. That is one of the major considerations for many teachers. It looks professional, usually visually appealing materials. And it's good for the less experienced teacher for the reasons we've seen there. So those are very good reasons. And I should add, I'm not in favor of the one or the other solution, and I'm not trying to persuade anybody to use a book or not to use a book. I'm just trying to show you why I have made the decision or taken the decisions that I took. On the other hand, if you use your own materials, which you have to do anyhow, because as we saw from the three truths, it is often necessary to develop extra materials when you're using a course book. But it gives the teacher more flexibility. As Barry said, you can adapt more easily when you are developing your materials to the individual needs of your particular student on a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. It allows teachers to adapt more easily to their interests and their needs. And if you are constantly adapting the materials, very often some books can be less up-to-date than others, and you can bring in more up-to-date material perhaps to complement and perhaps to be more relevant to their needs. Course books are often less attractive to adults and students. It reminds them of school when they had to use a book and they had to follow the book from page 1 to page 2 to page 106. So the nostalgia, the school nostalgia, often makes students and adults feel this is like being back at school. Course books some books actually are more advanced in this point than others, but there can be potential, less potential for differentiation within the group. When you're in charge, you can do it more easily. So course books sometimes give students a false sense of security. I can only speak English when the book is open in front of me is a sentence I once heard, because people think when the book's in front of me, I can look at the book. If I don't have a book in front of me, then I can't. And people get used to them working without looking at the book. Many books have the same structure in each chapter, which can produce a lack of variety. One of the main arguments for me is students can look ahead to next week's lesson, which I find counterproductive, because if I want people to be spontaneous in the classroom, then I don't want them to look at what we're going to do next week. I prefer them to look at what we have been doing last week. So that is one of the major elements in my decision not to use a book. It is a challenge. I'm not disguising that fact. Lessons become less predictable or more unpredictable because the students are able to decide themselves to make of the material more than you might have thought of. So you have to be more flexible in your own teaching behavior. You need to have more materials available because the lesson could possibly take an unexpected turn. I find that very interesting. I find that very challenging. It makes the lessons more interesting for me when students take on the responsibility for the content and actually go their own way. It requires time management skills because I know where more or less I want to be at the end of the 90 minutes. So I have to be constantly looking at at my watch and seeing how we're going. I have to be prepared to delegate responsibility for content to the students. They decide how long possibly they want to work on a task. At the same time, they need to have a visible, transparent structure because they should have the feeling that the teacher at least knows where this course is going. But, and that's what I said a few moments ago, I find it far more interesting, far more stimulating. And for teachers, it does enhance their skills, their teaching skills, because they have to be on the ball and ready to take over, bring in new ideas at any given moment during the classroom. So the challenges and the advantages. And you have to decide for yourself, weigh up the pros and cons when making this decision. So there's a need for the visible, transparent structure. So the question is, how do you create this structure? Structure, firstly, for the whole course, say the 15 lessons that I have in one semester, or within a lesson. So there need to be two: macro structure, the course, and the microstructure, the lesson. How to structure a course? And the way I do it is simply to work on topics, topic-based modules. Choice of topics, that is very important. You need to have criteria in mind. What topic do you choose? Because the choice of the wrong topic can cause the lesson to go awry. I choose topical, relevant issues where people have the content in their minds already because of the topicality and the relevance. Complex issues, depending on the level of course, I teach at B2, C1 and C2. So there needs to be a complexity in the topic because you can't have complexity of language, which you need at B2, if the topic itself is is too simplistic. Issues where the students are unlikely to have full in-depth knowledge, which I'll be coming to in a little bit later. That means I want my students to learn not only English, but to learn about the topic during the lesson. In fact, I can teach the engineering students learn about engineering during the topic, during the lesson. Not from me, but in a different way. So they are not only learning language, they're also learning about life and their special subject. As a result, topics are likely to interest the students. Topics that students may well have strong positions on, because the stronger the position they have, the more likely they are to get involved in speaking English on that topic. Topics that they may never have talked about before in their L1, because to raise their curiosity, because curiosity in the topic also means they're going to involve themselves in the topic, which means automatically they have to involve themselves in the language. Topics may continue to talk about after the lesson, and so many times I have seen students going out of the classroom after one of my lessons actually talking about what we have been talking about in class. And that is the confirmation of the relevance of the topics I choose. And finally, topics where the students can be challenged so that they can try to defend themselves, and defending yourself is also a good motivation for wanting to speak English. Here I have 3 boxes, and these 3 boxes show the topics I used last term. The left-hand side was my course B2 English for social scientists. The one on the right-hand side is the engineers, and the one in the middle is a C2 course for academic students. And you will see that 1 or 2 of them actually occur more than once. For example, citizenship and nationality is a topic from social sciences, but also a topic that can be discussed at a very high level in the C2 course. So that is what I mean by a topic. Okay, continue. I told you what the courses were, so we won't answer that question anymore. Right, structuring a lesson. So those 15 topics decide the course. Within each topic, we have to structure a lesson. A lesson needs to be structured in a transparent way so students can follow the direction. It's like when you give a presentation, you have to show in which direction you are working in the presentation, and students need to know which direction the course will be run. Right. I have to have certain things in mind. What my courses teach all skills. So I have to keep in mind that in the course, in one lesson, I have to deal with reading skills, listening skills, writing skills, and speaking skills. I also have to make sure the lexical repertoire is being extended. I have to make sure that the accuracy element of language and pronunciation is being taken into consideration. I have to, where necessary, enter questions or go on to questions on intercultural awareness. And I have to teach them, because these students are not language students. They're basically students who did not learn English up to a high level at school. So they are not language experts and need to know how to learn language. This is the structure of each lesson. Phase 1, warm-up. Phase 2, input phase 1, input phase 2. This sounds boring. I'll give you examples afterwards. Vocabulary, home assignments, feedback on the home assignments, language feedback, and final input. And those 8 phases are the phases which I go through in each lesson together with, or to meet the demands of the language that I wish to teach. So that goes on there. So the question is, how does all that come together? And to show you how this works, I'd like to take one concrete example. This is one I've done at C2 level and one I've done at B2 level. And the topic was Gen Z. And from my experience of Gen Z as a topic in the classroom, I can only recommend it because they are all Gen Z people. If you're teaching at university, they are all Gen Z. And to show them how the world sees Gen Z and to give them a chance to defend themselves is amazing. It strikes a chord with everybody and motivates everybody to get involved in the lesson in content terms, but also in terms of language skills. Right. So I said before, warm-up phase. What is the warm-up phase? The aim is to create interest, enhance interest, to find out how much they already know, and to balance the knowledge within the class. Sometimes more people are aware than other people. Possible activities include, what do you know about? I just send it, what do you know about Gen Z? Or if you had to give a presentation on Gen Z, what ideas would you include? What would you need to research? How would you structure the talk? They work in pairs to collect ideas. Or in advance, I can give one student a 5-minute presentation as a task to prepare for the lesson. Or I can say, look, next week it's Gen Z. Go onto the internet, find a text that you find interesting, bring the text along to the next lesson, and give a summary of the content and explain why you found that text interesting. One of my examples here this is how I start with, sometimes start as well. This works very well indeed. Here we have Generation Alpha, the baby boomer generation, Generation X, Generation Y, millennials, and Gen Z. And the question they asked to do, can you put them in the correct chronological order, Barry?
Huh. It's going. The answer is I'm not quite sure. Baby boomer was, I think, around what, 60s, 70s, and millennials, obviously in the millennial. Okay, at the change of the century. Generation Alpha is a new one on me. Gen Z clearly will have been the last, what, 5 years, and Generation Y must be around now because that's what's coming.
Right.
And
So
Generation X, looking at them clearly, will have been in the last century at the end of it.
I can give you a grade of almost satisfactory for that. The answer is here. See, we belong to the silent generation. Then come the baby boomers, then come Generation X. Millennials and Generation Y are actually the same. So that was a trick. And that kind of trick really gets discussion going. Then come Zoomers or Generation Z. And Generation Alpha is the one at the present time.
Ah,
So my students are all in the Generation Z, but that gets them off. So input phase, having done that, the input phases are where I do skill training. For example, to boost awareness of different reading or listening strategies, fast reading, slow reading, global detailed listening, raising awareness of main details, secondary details, and practicing note-taking. And I do things like either taking reading text, where all students get the same text. It's an alternative where different groups get different texts on the same topic in the classroom, explaining the difference, showing headlines. Would you want to read this text? What do you think you will find in the text? Do you think the writer will be positive, negative, neutral, etc.? Now read and find out, and they get only 2 minutes. And I start off by saying, look, Gen Z expect to change careers 3 times in their working life, once more than generations before. What do you expect to discover in the text? And from your perspective, do you agree with that headline? Then they receive the text. What's your reaction to the article? Find out if your fellow students agrees with you. So they're reading fast, talking, and then reporting. The alternative, as I said before, is to have different groups with different texts, where I hand out the text. The students mark the important details in each paragraph. Again, they only get 2 minutes. Compare in the group which items they have marked. Always interesting, working together, cooperative learning. Each group prepares a 2-minute summary of their text and report to each other, and the others have to listen, saying what differences and what similarities they have heard. And these are the things I show. Then we have a look. If I have enough, that's 6 groups, and they read and report to each other in the way I suggested. I can also, well, first they discuss which text they would like to read, and the groups, yes, important, the groups do actually choose. And if we have 2 or 3 groups with the same text, it doesn't matter, they are allowed to choose and then receive the text that they have chosen. Or I can also do it with listening. I take a podcast from the BBC on the same topic, explain differences between listening for all details or for specific details, show them the title. Would you want to listen to this audio? What do you think you will hear? Just as I did with the writing, listen and find out. And here we have, or what was the most interesting, important, surprising detail. I never ask questions about the text. I always ask questions like the most interesting, important, surprising detail to be as authentic as possible. See, Has Gen Z Lost the Will to Work is the title of that podcast. And they have to answer the question, what do they think they're going to hear, etc. And then they listen and say whether their assumptions were correct or not. And I can also do it, I'll go through this quickly, videos, basically the same kind of activities. I take a video from YouTube, I explain the difference for watching broad details or for specific details, as before, and then that is a fantastic video. They talk about the challenges involved in employing Gen Z. Right, so that was input phase 1. Input phase 2 is exactly the same, but with a different skill. If I have done listening in the first one, I do reading in the second. If I have done reading in the first phase, in the second. And again, exactly the same things that I did before, with exactly the same type of text as I did before, but what they're doing is actually involving themselves with the same topic, the same vocabulary, the same ideas, but with different skills. The third phase is vocabulary. Explain what I mean by vocabulary, how to learn vocabulary, how vocabulary learning is personal, not individual. Not everybody has to learn every word. Give them learning tips. For example, with a reading text, use a text already worked on and ask them to mark 10 words or phrases they think are useful for them. Then they compare with their partner and explain how choosing vocabulary makes input more effective, etc., etc. And then I go through a text I used in input phase 1 or 2. So they're now looking at the text from a different perspective, because I want them to see that a text is not only something to take content from, but something that they can use as a key to vocabulary learning. If I will want to do vocabulary work on the video, for example, or listening text, I would say, in pairs, think back to the video or note down words or phrases you can remember. They compare lists with other pairs, and I explain how noting down vocabulary is a way to make learning more efficient, etc., etc., etc. Then comes the home assignment, and this is something they do at home. It is either a writing skill, a writing task, a writing assignment, always on the same topic. So they have ideas. They may have other ideas, but they have a basis of ideas. And they write something like, for example, they write a text, but the task is fully contextualized. You, who you are, writing what kind of text, to whom, for what purpose, and a plausibly authentic text in a range of genres. For example, and they send it to me by mail no more than 2 days before the following lesson, so that I can put my comments and analyze strengths and weaknesses in the home assignment they complete. And they receive the text with my comments at the beginning of the following lesson. For example, here you find an article about Gen Z on the website. Read the article and post your personal comments on the way Gen Z people are portrayed. Write about 150, 180 words. So you, in this case, is you. You're writing it for the website, for the blog. You're reading the article and making a blog contribution. That is the text that I have to work on. Or I can also do an oral assignment. They have to give a presentation, which they record themselves on their smartphones, send me the audio file. 2 days before the next lesson, I listen to it and give them my feedback. Here, you're spending a semester at a university in the UK. For your English course, you've been asked to give a 5-minute presentation on Gen Z in the following lesson. Choose one of the following charts and prepare the presentation for next week. In the presentation, you should mention the very aspect shown in the chosen diagram, and then give your opinion as to whether the details are correct. And these are the kinds of things. The guide to generations in the workplace, or the connected generation. They have to say whether they agree with this depiction of their generation. Understanding Generation Z. Gen Z is stressed, depressed, and exam obsessed. And you can I'm sure, feel how they react to things like this. And the work, the assessments they do, the assignments they do at home, I get some amazing texts. Another one here. So you can see why I love the topic of Gen Z. I can recommend it to anybody. Then they get the feedback. And For me, that's an opportunity to ascertain the need for any revision. I don't do global revision because that normally bores at least half the class. I can revise and correct, I can individualize revision, and I can anonymize mistakes in the interest of neutrality because I put all the mistakes on a PowerPoint presentation, which I use in the next lesson. Giving feedback anonymously, collecting the important frequent errors on PowerPoint slides, and using the slides in class. Well, here we are. So that's the kind of thing I get. Language feedback, game, boring, without boring. The final input is more of the same to create a bridge from lesson to lesson, because phase 1 to phase 4 is always in lesson 1, the second half of lesson 1, and phase 5, 6, and 7 is always the first half of lesson 2. That means each topic bridges 2 lessons. And in this way, I can take the topic with the vocabulary, with the ideas from one lesson to the next, and that helps people to, first of all, consolidate the vocabulary, and secondly, to use this game in a different skill. So if I used in input phase 2A, the reading, and AB, second input phase, I used the audio. I will use a video in phase C. So I present a text or video or audio on the same topic, and students note down all the new details they see, read, or hear that haven't been dealt with in the previous phases. So authentic reading, you only, or listening or watching, you only note down what is new and not ignore what is not new. And this is Generation Alpha. Do you agree? What advantages, disadvantages might General Alpha be having now and in the future? Discussions in groups. Or I have all kinds of different texts, like I showed you in the first half. The oldest Gen Alphas can almost thrive. Here's how millennials' kids will shop, work, and live. What is Generation Alpha? How are they different from Generation Z? And as nearly all the students have siblings who are Generation Alpha, it is fantastic because they all complain about their siblings. Generation Alpha does not respect Generation Z. Is there anything in the text to confirm or contradict the ideas you came up with in the previous phase? And I have lots of alternatives just in case. For example, here are definitions. We define generations. Can you match the descriptions with the generations? Which of those is a generation of Generation Z, Generation Y, etc., etc.? That produces all kinds of topics. Well, or here's a diagram that claims to show the typical features and characteristics of Gen Zs. Can you identify with this? Or here, what each generation wants at work. This is a definition of the work approach of people from the different generations. Do you agree? And the final one is, how do I court Generation Z talent? This is a text for employers. If I want Generation Z in my company, what do I have to offer them to make the workplace in my company attractive? First of all, there's this deciding groups what they think is going to be in the text, and then I show them the text. And do you agree with what that person says? I'm sure you can imagine how responsive they are to things like this, because these are students who are going to be working in 2 or 3 semesters' time. So there we have the 8 phases. I've shown you how they all work. And within those, we have the various skills that I mentioned. That is the second half of the very first lesson. They are the third the first half of the second lesson, and halfway through the second lesson, the new topic comes and we start with phase 1, 2, 3 again. So that is the structure of the 15 lessons. That is the structure of each individual lesson. And after each lesson, the students receive a PDF copy of all the slides, the PowerPoint that I show them here. You can probably recognize some of them, that they can use then and refer to at home for revision purposes, or to actually reconstruct what we have been doing in the lesson. And one of the instructions they receive from me is to always go through the PowerPoint presentation. And as they are quite attractive slides, most of them actually do go through the slides and obviously then revise the English that we have been working on. Right. I hope I have shown you, first of all, the difficulty of choosing, the reasons for choosing a book or not choosing a book. And I hope I have shown you what benefits I personally accrue by not using a book, but by making all these materials myself. I will not deny that it is a lot of work. But what I will say is I now have about 35 modules of this type. And all I have to do is occasionally updating a new text here, a new video there. But basically, I have 35 lessons that I can use quite easily with very little preparation. So you're not only doing it for the one lesson. If you have lots of classes and expect to be teaching for the next few semesters or next few years, then it's something that it's like an item bank that you can refer to whenever you need a course. So, book or no book, I hope you have decided the one way or the other. Are there any questions? Just about squeeze it into it. So,
Yep.
time available. Right.
Brilliantly done, Geoff. Thank you very much indeed. There are some questions on the in the box at the moment. Let me take them. I don't know whether people would like to ask them personally, but certainly one of the early questions which came up was from Angelica Di Paiva, basically saying, to what extent does your work and your research depend on, guess what, AI, to get the resources you need to be able to do the teaching and solve the problems raised by the students?
Zero. Make zero use of AI. Being of the older generation, I am able to find texts that I need almost, not quite, but almost as quickly as ChatGPT could find the texts and find the solutions. And I enjoy the process. And I wouldn't enjoy the process if I entrusted GPT with that task. And GPT is not 100% reliable, and I would still have to check. Whereas I can search and check in one go when I do it myself. So I do not prepare using ChatGPT. I must admit I am privileged because I only teach once a week. I only have 3 classes a week. If I had 10 classes a week, that might be a slightly different matter. But I find it gives me more pleasure, and I can work in a far more targeted way to the group if I do it myself by Googling for certain texts, for example.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. I'm a bit in the same position. I find AI a bit threatening at the moment, but I do notice that more and more of my students are actually making use of it.
That is a problem.
Materials.
We can discuss that if you wish, how to deal with the problem of students trying to beat the system.
Well, that's one of them, but it's not my. It would be my question. I think it's more important we focus on our other colleagues who joined the session. Tatiana Bruskina asked whether students managed to learn the new vocabulary items within just 2 lessons.
Well, obviously, I don't know.
Mhm.
But I think the fact that they process the vocabulary, and I do always stress they should
Mhm.
learn the words that are relevant for them, and not every single word, as in the classroom where the teacher writes 200 words on the board and the pupils are expected to know all those 200 words the following week. They are
Yep.
responsible for the choice of the vocabulary which is useful for them. But having processed a lot of the vocabulary of that topic
Mhm.
via reading, watching, listening, and speaking, and the writing task, because they are all based on the topic, it is going through so many channels of perception that the chances of successful learning of the vocabulary they would like to learn are great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Do feel free, by the way, to come up with other questions, those of you who are watching, because, there may be things that you would like to look at as well. For example, Rania Kokinu has just come up with what is the mode of formal assessment? So you're talking about assessment, talking about, getting the results across. How do you assess your success?
I don't assess the weekly assignments.
Hmm.
I only comment on them. The reason being that that is the phase of the lesson where I need to find out the strengths and weaknesses of each individual student. And if I were to grade the home assignments, that would be counterproductive, because they would then definitely use ChatGPT or get somebody to do the work for them. And I stress this from the very beginning, and most of them, except for the occasional lazy student, they keep to the rules, and that works perfectly. So the test consists of a listening, reading, 2 writing, and 1 speaking test, the speaking test being a presentation. The presentation has to be given without text. They can't read from a script. So I can see whether they are able to give a 15-minute presentation on the topic they have chosen. They are allowed to choose the topic. The writing test consists of 2 parts. The first one is they write a term paper consisting of about 3 or 4 pages, again on a topic they wish. That theoretically could be done using external resources, but they also have to write a summary
Yep.
of a video under examination conditions. And there I can see whether there is a discrepancy between the text that has been given as a result of the term work and the text that has been given without external resources. And occasionally I do have high levels of discrepancy, and that student does not get a grade.
Okay, so that answers that question. Thank you very much. That's good. And I guess one of the questions, which is I've just dropped, so let me just make sure we bring it in, was from Burju Kurt, asking, are your materials arranged around topics?
Yes.
And are the topics the ones you presented in your presentation?
Yes, the ones I presented are just about half of the topics I have in my module.
Mhm.
At the beginning of each term, I ask the classes, what topics would you like to have processed in this course, and I can offer a whole range of topics. Occasionally, I actually do get some positive suggestions, but most of the time they leave it to me. But if anyone came up with a topic that I already have, I can immediately, from my bank of 35 topics, I can immediately provide the topic that they need. And if somebody comes up with something that I think is very useful, and we're using this matrix, I can easily make, within a couple of hours, make a new module to meet those needs.
That's good. Thank you. Okay. And now a very interesting question from a colleague and a co-author, Hassan Abu Abdelkader. Welcome. Salam alaikum. And basically, he asks, don't you agree that any international classroom needs to be book-free in order to match the new generation's orientation. In other words, aren't we having a call here for a repositioning of the learner in the class because books are no longer a place to learn?
Was it Voltaire? In the ideal world.
Well, I think the real world is the ideal world if you're a teacher. I don't know. I can't say that. I'm not speaking on Hassan's, but I don't know, Hassan, if you want to come in on that.
Okay, I'll give some comments.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because one change I have noticed in the 12 or 13 years that I've been teaching at the university is the increasing number of international students in my classroom. In fact, this term I now have a group of B2 students for urban planning, and only one of them is of German nationality, which causes tremendous problems pronouncing names and remembering names, but is fascinating because it allows me to immediately bring in intercultural issues and people talking about certain things in their own culture. A book is obviously less flexible, as I said before. I mean, I don't think they will ever reach a world without books. And especially probably at beginner's level. But I hope I have made my case for having this kind of PowerPoint, this flexible PowerPoint. It's not really a book, but a presentation, which I think is a good way of replacing books. Firstly, from the visual point of view, I hope you agree that the visuals the visuals are far more attractive and conducive to learning than black and white books. But I don't think I will see the end of books in the present form, or unless it's going to be digital books, which is basically the same, but not black and not in your hands, something you can hold in your hands. I'm not quite sure whether I've answered the question to that person's satisfaction, but I hope I've shown you why I do believe that books are not the better option if the teacher has time to prepare the materials.
Okay, well, we've got a couple more questions before we, thank you for that. We've got a couple more questions before we go back to Ian. First one from Louis Marin and from Angelica Paiva have both the stopper question. How can you neglect a book when you're preparing your students for TOEFL examinations or for Cambridge or Pearson tests?
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I would say, are you preparing students then to pass the test, or are you preparing students so that they can show the proficiency in the skills, which are two slightly different things. I aim to give evidence of the fact that the students can fulfill the proficiency requirements in the C1, C2, B2 definitions, which are in the Common European Framework. I understand why certain examination boards use certain types of tests. I am privileged that I only have to mark a maximum of 15 or 20 students, so I can do it by myself, and I don't have to have resort to multiple choice and true false and closed questions in the test. So my aim is to show whether people have the skills that are defined in the Common European Framework. I am not so much interested in vocabulary. I'm interested in testing their skills. And with the quality of language, which is also defined in the Common European Framework for each individual test. And the quality statements are in Chapter 5, the skill-based statements are in Chapter 4. Those are my guidelines. They determine the criteria I use to mark written work and presentations. But otherwise, they have to fulfill the skill requirements as defined by the Common European Framework.
Okay, thank you very much. So just one more question before we hand the show back to Ian. Basically, from Angelika de Paiva, a typical progression route for your learners. Well, you've gone through the progression route very clearly, so I think we've got that. But in terms of their progression, in terms of their needs and their exam needs, at what point are you focusing on that?
Well, the exam needs are the exams that I set. I set the exams.
Yeah.
And so I am also teaching to the test, but I feel my tests, because of the lack of restrictions in terms of numbers of papers to be marked, I feel I am in a better position. I'm in a privileged position.
Hello. Yeah.
Basically, the question the question means how do I know whether a person has gone from B2 to C1? How do I know whether a person has reached C1? That comes out of the fact that the skills that they require in order to achieve a pass at the higher level have to be demonstrated. Just as an example, I haven't done it in a test yet, but it's a good example for the classroom. I can use the same text of the same length, of the same density, at 3 different levels by asking the students to do different tasks. I have a B2 task to go with this text. I have a C1 task and I have a C2 task. For example, if it's a listening comprehension, I can offer it twice and ask for fewer details. If it's a C1 task, I can again offer it twice, but I need far more detail. And for C2, they only hear the test once. So I have a hierarchy of difficulty within the B2, C1 and C2 test system.
Great, thank you. Well, the news is, as I say, the news is coming up on us. So basically, this is a real final question from Joan Walsh. Difference in 30 seconds between learning skills versus learning vocabulary. Can you do that one?
Reading skills mean...
Learning skills, as she puts it, and you put it, and learning vocabulary.
Learning skills means knowing how you learn best. People learn in slightly different ways. I know there's a discussion taking place, for example, in LinkedIn at the moment on whether there are different learning styles or not. But people learn in different ways, helping them to learn on the basis of the weaknesses and strengths that they demonstrate in their assignments. So it goes beyond vocabulary. It also goes into cultural aspects of vocabulary, if you wish. I mean, if by vocabulary you mean repertoire, then vocabulary is only one aspect of the vocabulary. Collocations, also, for example, knowing how to form longer sentences, which goes beyond lexical repertoire and goes into terms of grammatical structures.
Good. I think you're right. I think it all fits in very, very, very clearly. Thank you very, very much indeed, Geoff. Really informative. Lots of things to dwell on and to work on and go back to. And thank you again. I think it was a tremendous session. Let us now return to Ian McMaster for the news. Thank you very much.
Only good news here. Thank you, Barry, for dealing with the questions so well. I was checking to see whether you missed anything. You didn't. And thank you, Geoff, for a fantastic talk. Geoff, maybe I can ask you to stop sharing your presentation just for a second.
Okay, just one moment.
And I'll just wrap up with some information about the ICC and to thank you all very much for coming. I hope you can you all see, can you see the presentation there? Let me just go back up. That was Geoff's talk. The ICC organization, go to our website to find out more about us. I'll tell you all, we have lots of things that the ICC, the International Language Association, does in terms of supporting teachers, trainers for various languages, not only English. One thing we have is a journal that we produce, edited by Barry himself. You can find out more information about that on the website. Also offering the Uralta, the Uralta teacher training schedule program to help teachers. Now I've lost the presentation. That's good. Let me just go back to the Uralta. But we also have we also have a conference coming up next year. That is going to be in Zurich, and the dates are the first or the second weekend, in May. You will also find out more about that on our website. And one last thing I should say is that we people ask about certificates of attendance. They're available to anybody who is an ICC member. So if you're not, go and have a look at our website and consider becoming a member, because I say there's a lot of very useful services that we offer. And we have been recording this presentation, and the presentation will be up on the ICC website relatively soon for members in the members area, and made available, I believe, then on YouTube for everybody. Sorry, there's the details of our conference next year in Zurich. We had a great conference this year on Cyprus. It was fantastic, and I'm sure this one will be just as good. And as I say, those of you who are ICC members can request a certificate of attendance by just dropping us an email to this address. And if you're not a member, but you decide you'd like to, then you can do that quickly, and I'm sure we can also send you a certificate of attendance for this presentation. There was a question about the slides, whether the slides are also available online. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think if anybody wants to get in touch with Geoff, he'll be able to answer that. Or Geoff, what's the situation there? I'm just going to
Yes,
stop.
by all means. I can send the slides. It's Geoff.Tranter at TU-Dortmund.de.
So just say that again, Geoff.
Shall I put that in the chat?
Yeah, or I could put it in.
Yeah. Geoff.Tranter
Yep.
at TU-Dortmund.de.
Yeah, okay. So we got that in the chat for anybody can contact Geoff directly about that. Good. Well, I think it's 1 minute past 6, isn't it, Barry?
Yeah, exactly that.
So I think we should wrap up now. Thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your active participation, also for the lot of very interesting questions that we had. That was fabulous. And of course, most of all, thanks to Geoff for giving up his time and giving us a very interesting presentation of the advantages and the flexibility of not using a book, and showing how he does it, which I'm sure will be an inspiration to a lot of people. So Geoff, many thanks indeed. And we're going to stop the recording now and just wish everybody a good evening. So see you at our next webinar. Watch out on our website for details. We do them regularly, roughly once a month. So hopefully see you in the future as well. Take care. Bye.
Bye.